Great to have you here, and we very much look forward to this upcoming hour. But before we actually dive into what we want to talk about today, I would like to make some technical remarks. This online session will be recorded, and it will be made available on adaptationcommunity.net afterwards as a recording. So if you prefer not to be recorded and not be part of this recording, I would kindly ask you to leave the session now, and we will make it available afterwards for you to look at it. We would also kindly ask everyone who is not a speaker to mute yourselves and keep your videos turned off. However, this does not mean that you cannot contribute. There's a chat function here in MS Teams, and you can write your comments and questions into the chat. We will also have a little survey later on, and we very much encourage you to participate in this one. It will be on Mentimeter, so if you have your smartphones available and can already log on to Mentimeter, that would also be good. But we will also show a little more about this later on, and we encourage you to participate in the survey. If you have any technical problems, please send an email to us or write here in the chat, and we will try to help you out. With this, let's now return to what this webinar is actually about, National Communities of Practice for Ecosystem-Based Adaptation. Connecting on EBA, learning from and with each other, finding new ways of dealing with challenges linked to EBA implementation, making sure that EBA as a topic gets more integrated into political processes and strategies so that it can be implemented on a larger scale. The list of reasons why we need to connect on ecosystem-based adaptation, why we need communities of practice is long, and I could definitely continue with it for quite a while. However, establishing a community of practice and keeping it going can be quite challenging. And this is particularly true in national contexts where political situations evolve and really affect the work that you do, including the work of your community of practice, and where also resources might be limited to actually establish and keep a community going. So we want to use this space today to introduce you to two examples of where communities have been established and they are still up and running today, so that you have the opportunity to learn from this and maybe work on an own community of practice in your context. With this, let's see if I can move on in my presentation. It is good. I want to say a few more words about what we will be doing today. We will start with an introduction of the international EBA community of practice, but keep this rather brief. It's just to give you an overview of sort of the umbrella international community that we also have. We will then go into an interactive survey on Mentimeter. You can already see the Mentimeter code here, but we will also show it again later on. And the survey will be on Mentimeter, so please log on to Mentimeter and then be available there with your phone or with your computer. You can do that as well. We will then go into the country examples on national communities of practice with experiences from the Philippines, which Albert Magalang from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources in the Philippines will go into. And after that, we have Barney Gope from the Department of Environment, Forestries and Fisheries in South Africa, who will also share experiences from the South African community. Yes, and then afterwards we have time for questions and comments. So anything you have to share, please post it here into the chat, and we will get into that later on. Okay, let me start with introducing the International EBA Community of Practice, which was founded in 2015 through the global project Mainstreaming EBA as an opportunity to connect on EBA on an international scale. So really making a room where everyone could get together and connect on an international scale. One moment. Now my presentation disappeared. Let me see if I can get it back. Also, hello and welcome to everyone who just joined. Please mute yourselves and keep your videos turned off for this session. Thank you very much. There it is again. Okay, the target group and members of the International EbA Community of Practice are national governments, international organizations, civil society, and research institutions. So it's a rather broad group of members. And the focus of the community is to strengthen EbA in planning and decision-making processes. However, we have the objective of joint development of harmonized approaches, evidence-based lessons learned, and best practices. So I included a little graph here, which you can see on the right side, because I think it reflects very well this combination of the focus on strengthening EbA in planning and decision making, but at the same time also having the objective of working on evidence-based lessons learned and best practices. So the community of practice, also in relation to the Friends of EbA and the Partnership for Ecosystem and Disaster Risk Reduction, moves more on sort of the scale between policy and practice, a little more to the practice side, and a little further away from the science side, which you can see here more on the right, and where Petter is maybe a little more located. The International Community of Practice was established as a knowledge and expert network, which was really meant for exchange and mutual learning. So getting together beyond projects, institutional and regional boundaries, working on an international level. We have more than 12 governments, more than 14 international organizations and research institutions and civil society as members. And one of the highlights of the community are the annual EbA Community of Practice workshops, which take place once a year. And yeah, we just had one very recently, end of November, with now in total more than 550 participants from all the workshops that we've been doing from around 30 countries. In this last workshop, we had more than 230 participants. We very much focus in the international EbA community of practice on concrete South-South cooperation between partner countries and thematic working groups, but also all the products of the global project Mainstreaming EbA are based on exchange with a community of practice. We always make sure that all the examples that we use also come from within the community. So and that's also an important part of the international community, focus really on implementation on the international scale, and really are reliant on what the community provides to its members. The publications coming out, as mentioned, both from sorry about that. I hope you can hear me again. Yes, so once again, we have publications coming out both from South-South collaboration, but also from within the global project. The international community provides solutions, both on the platform Panorama, Solutions for a Healthy Planet. We can post the link to Panorama later on as well. But also just as case examples for different themes, for different publications. And we have exchanges and workshops. I already mentioned the Community of Practice workshop, but there's also the EbA Knowledge Day, which has a stronger focus on policy making. And from within the community, we also have examples for trainings, but we also offer trainings to the community. So trainings is another important component of the International Community of Practice. What differentiates the international EbA community of practice from national communities is really this fact that it does not work without contribution from implementing projects. Now, this is of course also the case in national communities of practice. However, as I said, since we are very much working on a meta level, we are very much reliant on actually getting contributions from the community and collect trends and perspectives on that level. We connect internationally rather than nationally, and we in the international community are not focused on challenges, opportunities, and experiences in one specific country context. So again, this means that there's a stronger focus on trends and overall tendencies rather than really focusing on the specifics of one case example or one country context. And the international community also faces other challenges than national communities of practice. So, for instance, now that we are working so much in the virtual space, there is always this challenge of how do we get an international community together with time differences? How do we deal with language barriers and so on and so forth? These are particularly strong challenges for the international community, and we will probably hear more about national challenges in a little bit. With this, I would now also like to hand over to my colleague Alexa Brown from the Climate Support Program in South Africa, who will guide us through the Mentimeter. And I already saw that you posted the link, the new code, because we still had an example code in the agenda. So this is the new code for the Menti. And with this, over to you, Alexa.
Thank you very much, Louise, and hello everybody from a cloudy Johannesburg in South Africa. It's great to be able to participate in this international community for the first time for me. I'm just setting up the Mentimeter presentation. In the meantime, could you please, we would love everybody to participate in this. It's a great way for everybody to engage and interact with the questions that we have in the survey that will allow you to see what others are thinking about the answers, and then also help us to put together a mini report by looking at these results. So if this is your first time using Mentimeter, it's best used on your cell phones. So if you could log into mentimeter.com, and then a code box will come up. And you can put in the code, which is 1385383. And from there, you will be able to see on your phone the places where you can put a response. Louise, I'm just going to present from my screen so that we can see the active responses coming up.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so you should be able to, from your phone, see the questions, and then from your laptop screens, you'll be able to see the answers. They'll pop up. Everybody's answers will pop up, and then we'll get a better idea of what everyone's thinking. Great, so let's check in and hear from everybody. Just a tester so that everybody can figure out the way that Mentimeter works. There's a heart or a like button. You can press these, they're interactive, and it will show up. So I see lots of people are already engaging. Great. So the first question, where in the world are you sitting today? There should be a box you can type in your question, and we will be able to see where everyone is coming from. So we have Germany, South Africa, Philippines, Bonn, Austria, Switzerland, Colombia, great. That's a spread. Thanks, everybody. So now on to the second question, which is, and someone from the UK. Great. I'll move on to the next question. How do you connect with peers in the EBA space in your country? This is an open-ended question. You can put multiple answers in. We would just love to hear how it's possible in your context to connect on this topic. So we have people who connect through social media, through the community of practice. personal networks. Social media seems to be very popular. That's a good indication. Workshops and sometimes in the field. So very practical there. Existing networks and contacts. Still social media, social media, social media through calls and webinars. I'm sure those are very, very popular this year. Emails. Through day jobs and policy. And field-based activities. Webinars, more webinars and workshops. So we have some virtual and we have some in-person connections. Great, thank you. I will move to the next question now. Would it be useful to have a national community of practice in your country? This is assuming there isn't one. Or maybe you don't know about one in your own country. You can use the little buttons to slide along the bar. There's a ranking here, so 0 being you strongly disagree, and 5 being that you strongly agree, and then the different options of choice. So it looks like a community of practice, a national community of practice would be useful so far. Someone or a few people are not too sure yet. And someone says, no, it's not so useful. Interesting. Okay. I'll give it one more minute. You can put in your last answers. Still, someone's also not too sure. Maybe our case study examples from the Philippines and South Africa will shed a bit more light on the usefulness of a community of practice. Okay, I'll skip to the next question. How would a national community of practice be useful for you? So here there's a ranking. You have different options and you can click on your primary usefulness and then rank them from there. And you can put in multiple answers on your cell phones. And then we'll wait for the results to come in. I can't see any results coming in yet. This seems to have frozen a little bit.
Put in an answer, so
okay,
it
thanks.
should be coming. Maybe this takes a moment.
Let me just try that again. There we go. Okay, so here we have some answers. So the first usefulness would be for sharing information and practice. The second would be for building a network with practitioners. Third would be for policy development. And the fourth for learning more about the topic of ecosystem-based adaptation. And then very few about other. Still some answers are coming in. Let's just wait a moment so we can get the last few answers. Great, thank you. Let's go to the next one. What information do you need from existing communities of practice to kick off your own national community of practice? This is also an open-ended answer. You can type in whatever information you think you would need in your capacity or in the national capacity. It would be interesting to find out. And this is also context-driven. Different countries at different levels of development of their communities of practice and will require different types of information. Okay, so some answers coming in saying how and when you would meet. The structural setup. Different types of exchange formats. So there we saw how people connect already. There's virtual spaces, there are in-person spaces, there are many types of exchange formats, and that would need to be organized. Challenges and lessons in bringing private sector role players, information on best practices, shared experiences, the level of formality or informality, the frequent updates on experiences, lessons and success stories, organizational processes, timelines, and logistical requirements for getting a national community of practice established, policy linkages and opportunities to influence, fitting in with existing networks. I think that's quite a difficult one, how to coordinate existing networks and pull them all together into a formal or informal type of community of practice. Actual EBA measures being done at the local level worth scaling up. Lessons learned and information on networks to set up national projects involving communities of practice, and research versus practice, how to balance these things. Thank you very much. If there's a last input, please type it in quickly. I'm going to change to the last question. There, I see one last one. Consistent updates and regular exchanges of best practices. Okay, and for the last question, is your community of practice ready to share experiences with new communities of practice? So we already have 8 people saying absolutely, 9 people, let's share, let's get people on board and learning about how to do this. 3 people say that things are still under construction, maybe not ready to share just yet, but still willing. And 7 people are saying there's nothing to share yet. So they would, I'm sure, be very happy to receive the information from the group saying absolutely, let's share. Great, thank you everybody. That's the short survey, just something to check in, see where we're all at. It's clear that some people are part of communities of practice, some aren't. And for the rest of the session, I'm sure we can learn a lot from the colleagues in South Africa and the Philippines. Thank you very much. Back to you, Louise.
Thank you very much, Alexa. I think this is very interesting to look at, and it's great to see that there are already quite a few people who say, yes, let's get together, let's share and learn from each other. So now it's finally time to actually dive into the examples that we want to look at today. And I would hereby like to invite Mr. Albert Magalang from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources in the Philippines to tell us a bit more about the community of practice in the Philippines. So Albert, please unmute yourself. If you can, turn your video on. If the quality is not good enough, you can also leave it off. And I would like to ask Dolores to share the PowerPoint presentation. Albert, you are still on mute.
Okay, thank you so much, Louise. I can share my PowerPoint, but I'm not a meeting organizer or a presenter. That's why I don't have that.
You should be able to just share it, actually.
That's right. I don't only meeting. It says here that only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
Okay.
Well,
the PowerPoint is coming in a while. It can be shared.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dory.
Dory. Thank you. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Anyway, from the Philippines, it's afternoon. So, hello everyone. In fact, we're happy. I mean, the Philippines is happy to share with you today the Philippine experience that we have on establishing the EbA Community of Practice. Okay, if I can turn on my
I also have it now, so I will share it in a moment.
Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, because I don't have that function to share my presentation. Oh, yeah, great.
Is it
Thanks so
visible now?
much.
Good.
Yes, got
Perfect.
it. So can we now have the next slide, Luis? So this will be the salient points that I'm going to share with the group. So I have 6 subtopics that I will be presenting, and starting on the first topic, the enabling factors to establish the EBA. Actually, we have started with a piece of memorandum circular that the Undersecretary for Policy, Planning, and International Affairs has issued on February 1, 2016, right after the Paris Agreement. I mean, after the COP in Paris. So the Undersecretary directed all bureaus and services to integrate EBA in regular programs, projects, and activities. So, and as part of the list of department contributions to implement the countries in DC, there is this circular to directing all offices to integrate in EBA as in compliance to the provisions of along with the provisions of the Paris Agreement. And then, and secondly, the support from the Federal Republic of Germany through the BMUIKI funded the EBA mainstreaming project in the Philippines. So through this program, the Environmental Management Bureau, through its climate change division, together with our regional offices, especially the climate change focal persons, rolled out regional orientation workshops, and cluster training courses among various stakeholders representing the local government units, the academe, the civil society, government agencies, and the regional offices of the ministry. So through this, we were able to enjoin the participation on the previous slide. Yes, participants nationwide in the EbA Community PHL, which we have an account on Facebook, which somehow became our portal for exchanging and sharing of knowledge, information, and experience on ecosystem-based adaptation. And on the next slide, the motivation that made them join the community of practice, that there are a number of reasons. Like, for example, in fact, not only did we mobilize people's participation, but also the interest. This was also manifested and also demonstrated through actual counterpart funds, and that these stakeholders, the different stakeholders presented here, provided especially through their transportation costs in order to participate in the various events we conducted. For one, the civil society organization, they joined because they were on search of green technology solutions that were in complementation with their advocacy work at the local level. Like, for example, the Society of Environmental Engineers and Active Youth Green Educators Group. As to the National Economic and Development Authority, The department joined because of the interest on strategic environmental assessment on resilience framework, which is in line with the implementation of the Philippine Development Plan from 27 to 2022, which is in the plan. There is that chapter on environment and ecological stability. So more on this economic development authority has really it has been working on a strategic environmental assessment and resilience that has been incorporated in the Philippine National Development Plan. And then the Housing, Land and Land Use Regulatory Board recognized the opportunity that ecosystem-based adaptation can enhance their reach to reef planning guidelines. And on the part of the private sector, the sector recognized that EbA is so vital or essential for business continuity. And then the local government units also was interested because they're working on green solutions as part of their local climate change action plans. And then in order to access the funding for adaptation actions through the People Survival Fund. So it would be easier to integrate EbA and their project proposal so that they would be able to, to have that climate lens or EbA lens on their proposal that would, ease down. I mean, that would make them easier to access the People Survival Fund. And on the next slide, may I share with you the process of organizing the EbA community. I mean, I'm referring to the what you call this, the informal organization that we have, which is also our account on Facebook. So we built our processes in establishing the EbA community on practice around each of the main work package of the EbA mainstreaming project in order to ensure that, as we learned, the EbA concept, tools, and methodological processes, we were also slowly building on the membership and their commitment to undertake ecosystem-based adaptation actions in the respective fields of specialization and areas of assignment or operations. So we decided as well to conduct EbA subnational learning events to provide the physical interaction platforms with local actors, and for learning exchanges, we had the EbA, like for example, the national conferences that we conducted. So to keep the interactions and EbA exchanges, we provided the EbA community PHL on the social media or through the Facebook. So our vision then, and until now, it remains that a functional EbA community of practice providing technical assistance to national, subnational, and local levels. So this vision we try to reach by maintaining our interactions with climate and adaptation experts, and most of whom are members of the National Panel of Technical Experts of the Climate Change Commission, and those of the Department of Science and Technology through its office, PAG-ASA, which is called as the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration. And on the next slide, we have the capability building for the EbA community of practice. So members of the EbA community of practice take pride that they have undergone the capability building activities on EBA way back in 2016 and 2017, and that the learnings and insights until now continue to be shared with subnational actors and stakeholders as the core group continues the enhancement of materials on related to EBA, having access to materials from the international EBA community of practice as well. So looking back, it was necessary for the core group of the EBA community of practice to undergo the following. Like, for example, on the next slide, we have the orientation of the EBA core group. So we have the various agencies there present with our consultants, advisors from the international community. So you can recognize them. So we had the different departments, agencies of the government present during the orientation for the EBA core group. And also on the next slide, we have also the EBA training of trainers in 2016 that focused mainly on the EBA mainstreaming methods and tools. And also another EBA activity is on the next slide is the EBA evaluation courses, which was held in 2017. Okay, and on the next slide, in order to test the level of understanding of the EBA concept, tools, and methodological processes, we also embarked on a series of subnational level EBA orientation project proposal workshops for funding under the People's Survival Fund. You can see the different project proposals and the project titles with their corresponding proponents, the implementing partners, the fund being requested, and the counterparties are the outcomes of the EBA orientation that we conducted. And also on the next slide, these are further the list of the project proposals that we were able to generate. So they gave us actually the affirmation that EBA has local stakeholders, given the 44 formulated project proposals on EBA adaptation actions. So shared with the Climate Change Commission, which is administering the People's Survival Fund at that time. So we have readily available proposals related to EBA, 44, the total of 44 projects and all. And on the next slide, with regards to regards to capacity building, the members also they have these initiatives. They had these initiatives at the local and subnational levels that were documented and published in the department's international journal as part of the documentation of the EBA. So we have the canopy as the name of the journal. So most of this is a special publication wherein all the articles written there were all about ecosystem-based adaptation. So we have this international publication of EBA practices. And then the next slide, further on the capacity building, the members' initiatives and program studies were likewise shared in international learning exchanges and also in EBA national fora. And the next slide would give us a platform. This is what I was talking about, the EBA community PHL and social media. And our initial platform maintains the contacts, maintains and sustains the contact among the members. So we're maintaining the EbA community PHL and social media. So there were a lot of information being shared, best practices related to EbA, and sometimes it's all about climate change in general. But as based on the feedback that we received, it has become the source of information, especially for researchers, for students who would like to read about climate change adaptation in general. So on the next slide, I'd like to share with the group the lessons that we learned having the EbA Community of Practice for the last, what was the year? 20, can we go back to the slide? Yeah, from 2016 to 2020, sorry for that. So number one is taking stock of what is already in place in the country, what has worked best, and what are the pitfalls in the processes. So we have to take stock of that, of those pitfalls, and also to consider what climate information are available to be used in the development of learning materials, both for trainers, facilitators, and also at the community level. So we strongly it is good to ensure that you have ready institutional backup that will provide the necessary climate projection scenarios and so on. And also, we need to tap the expertise of those who have been capacitated by previous climate change projects, like the GIZ projects. So as much as possible, to stick to the guidance of the EbA framework approach. So basically, the EbA framework approach would serve as the Bible, giving us the guidance in the course of mainstreaming, like for example, mainstreaming the cycle and its tools, taking into serious consideration the local and socio-cultural and political contexts. And then also we have to consider the serious role of our climate experts that we have in providing guidance to the EbA community of practice. It so happened that these climate experts are so approachable that anytime if you would like to solicit their comments on certain write-up, on certain technical document that you're working on, they would easily share with you a lot of information coming from an expert. And then also tapping the expertise of those who have previously been capacitated on climate change adaptation and ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. And I think some of them are present right now as part of our participants. So actually, this is my last slide, I think. So, okay. Anyway, the last to the second to the last slide. So we know that the EbA community PHL is still in progress, and I hope that this will be retained and sustained for another number of years, because from here we were able to establish network of training institutions that would support the mainstreaming of EbA at the provincial level, and also the support for capacity development based on given training formats and digital virtual events or options. That is also shared by the global EbA, by the global international global or international community. And also, we would like to set up an online atlas on EbA measures based on the existing vulnerability atlas in the country. And lastly, the Climate Change Commission, which is the central coordinating and policy-making body on climate change here in the Philippines, and or perhaps through our office, the Climate Change Service, we have yet to provide a platform to accredit CCA, DRR Communities of Practice to fulfill the EbA community PHL objectives, like, to have the climate change knowledge, management, and sharing among agencies, sectors, and across levels of governance, like from communities down to the barangay, municipality, or city, or province, region, or national levels. So with that, thank you so much for your attention. I hope that you were able to get some, insights, information, especially the experience that, that we would like to get from us. And so that you can also, in one or the other, replicate what we have done here in the Philippines. Thank you so much also for GIZ for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much. And good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albert, for this presentation. I think there was really a lot of information in there. And yeah, also I learned a lot. So thank you very much for sharing. And I am sure everyone else did as well. But since we are short on time, I would, without any further ado, like to hand over to Barney Gope from the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries in South Africa to share their insights on the South African community of practice. If there are any questions or comments, please post them into the chat. And then over to you, Barney. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Can you hear me and can you see my presentation?
Yes, both.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to also share our experience from South Africa, and greetings from a cloudy Pretoria in South Africa. My name is Barney Gope. I work for the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. So when I saw Mr. Albert Magalang's name, his surname, I thought he's also from South Africa, and I was wondering, because we do have a surname like that here in South Africa, but it's in one of the indigenous languages, which is Sesotho. It's pronounced Magalang in our case. So yeah. So then this morning I'm going to begin by giving a bit of context in terms of, how did we get to formulate the community of practice, and then quickly move on to how it played out when we launched it and what came out of it, of the launch that we had, and what, where are we going with this community of practice. So as a way of introduction, South Africa is not exempt from the impacts of climate change. And as a result, we conducted a vulnerability assessment of the 9 South African vegetation biomes. And this was followed by the development of the climate change adaptation plans for these biomes. So the plans recommended 4 major responses, namely ecosystem-based adaptation. Secondly, also the biodiversity stewardship, which is a voluntary program that we are running in the country, and also manage. Hello.
Yeah. May I briefly just interrupt? Could you put your presentation into full screen mode?
Oh, sorry. Yes, sure.
Thank you. Because then participants can see it a bit better.
Apologies for that.
Thank you.
Apologies for that. Is that okay?
Yes, that's much better. Thanks a lot.
Great, fantastic. Yes. So then, as I was saying, the plans recommended 4 major responses, namely ecosystem-based adaptation. Second one is biodiversity stewardship. Third is management approaches, and last, spatial planning. So you realize that the focus really is specifically in the biodiversity and ecosystems sector, which is one of the sectors that's identified by the recently adopted National Climate Change Adaptation Strategy in South Africa. So EbA was identified as an important component of the country's overall climate change adaptation response, as indicated in the National Climate Change Response Policy or Plan and other strategic documents in the country. And this is simply because it's got advantages several advantages that include generating multiple social and economic cultural co-benefits for local communities. It also contributes to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, but also playing a role in contributing towards climate change mitigation by conserving or enhancing carbon stocks. So the strategy, the EBA, South Africa's EBA strategy basically had 4 areas that it seeks to focus on. And one of those areas was the area of effective coordination, learning, communication, and to mobilize capacity and resources for ecosystem-based adaptation. And as you can see on the screen, there's 3 other areas that include research, monitoring, evaluation, and the third area, integration of EBA into policies and support overall climate change adaptation strategy. And lastly, implementation of projects to demonstrate the ability of EBA to deliver a wide range of core benefits. So then one of the outputs contained in the strategy, which has largely, as I've mentioned earlier on, to do with coordinating mechanisms for EBA, clearly articulated the need for convening or rather establishing the EbA Community of Practice as indicated on the screen. So then we went ahead in 2019 and in collaboration with key partners, namely the GIZ, the South African National Biodiversity Institute, United Nations Environment Programme, and Conservation South Africa, to establish the National EbA Community of Practice. So there was initial engagement amongst us and the partners, only to find that we share this, sort of the same desire, the same ideas, and so on. And we went ahead to support as part of implementing the EBA strategy. So the EBA Community of Practice, in our case, is convened at least once a year and is governed by a set of terms of reference. And really the aim is to bring together practitioners, researchers, and funders to share experiences and lessons learned on EBA in different contexts, of the country. Now, the purpose, as I've mentioned, is really to address in a joint and coordinated manner EBA to help work towards a collaborative learning process that is used to develop harmonized approaches and with evidence-based lessons and best practices so that it assists in planning and implementing EBA effectively. And then again, the functions really would include to support knowledge and experience sharing and mutual learning between projects and institutions focused on building the resilience of those people who are most vulnerable to climate change using EBA approaches. And also to provide the opportunity for capturing the knowledge generated in particular projects and programs through case studies, lessons learned, best practices, and distributing knowledge through the development of maps, guidelines, and online tools. Now, these were the people that we targeted as part of the establishment and the launch of the EBA. So it was mainly the government sector, the various government departments, national as well as provincial, some municipalities as well, and public entities, civil society organizations. Now, these are important because most of them have got experience in implementing a range of climate change programs. So we needed that experience and knowledge. Researchers, since most of our work is really based on science, so that's like very important, and academia as well. And private sector, because they can play a role in many respects, including funding, some of the projects, or including supporting projects in various ways, since they are also dependent on these ecosystems and biodiversity. So this is a range of people that we targeted. And the Community of Practice was launched in April 2019 in Cape Town, at arguably one of the best botanical gardens in the world, the Kirstenbosch Gardens. And as you can see, the logos of all the partners on there. This is a sample of the advert that we sent out, inviting people to the launch and establishment of the Community of Practice. So, progress to date. The workshop, as we mentioned, was attended by national, provincial, and local government, public entities, research institutions, NGOs, and funding agencies. So it was held over a 3-day in total. 2 days we spent basically in a room, and then the last day we went on a field trip as a way of demonstrating one project that is adopting the EbA principles, basically. So as part of the 2-day, the first 2 days in session, so we had a plenary session, which was followed by a breakaway sessions that looked at different topics. So this really was setting up the work of the Community of Practice going forward. So the one session looked at EbA mainstreaming and implementation. In other words, doing a thorough assessment of the need for this and how do we begin going about this going forward. And the second session looked at research needs and monitoring and evaluation. How do we set this up and design this going forward? And lastly, of course, these things have to be, facilitated, and financing is one important aspect, that makes sure that we facilitate, we implement, and we sustain this program going forward. So this is just to give you a flavor of what sort of transpired in the different sessions, a whole range of things, rich discussions that resulted in integrated, issues, recommendations that emerged out of that include the need to integrate EbA into policies, plans, strategies to ensure the maximization of benefits, identify key sectors for integrating EbA and undertake situational assessment. And I'm not going to read this in detail, but the presentation I think will be shared, but it gives you a sense of what are the real sort of needs under mainstreaming. One of the highlights here is that we need to integrate EbA, for instance, in environmental impact assessments. So that's one of the areas that was identified. Then session 2 looked at research and monitoring and evaluation. Again, a number of recommendations were made. These include there are a number of tools in place to ensure research informs learning, communication, integration, and project implementation. And how do we tap on these, for instance? There is a need for better understanding of the drivers of change. There is also a need for capacity building, for translating science into easy-to-use information. Also, the gaps identified in the area of marine side of things. They need also to undertake a scoping assessment of EbA research in the country, and so on. And the last area was on EbA financing. Again, a number of recommendations came up here that include the support for the development of projects, concepts for new EbA implementation projects, and also creating a mechanism for coordination, in other words, a programmatic approach, using funds from donors to mobilize private sector to leverage funds for sustainability, and also looking into tax incentives for companies to invest in EbA measures. So this is just to give you a sense of the kinds of discussion that emerged. So this is what sets us up. So what we did is we have these 3 task teams putting together this work, and the initial sort of straw documents and so on were going to be, or were supposed to be presented this year in April. Unfortunately, COVID happened and everything came to a halt in terms of being able to convene the second community of practice. But we had to postpone it to early next year in February. It's highly likely it will be what we call a virtual sort of meeting. But we were hoping that it would, by then, things would have sort of be permitting in terms of an in-person sort of gathering, because as you see in front of us here, one of the things that we want to continuously encourage is to always have a field trip looking at one of the EBA projects as a way of demonstrating that EBA is implementable, and hopefully we can see some of the results. And that is practical. So on the 3rd day, we had a field visit. Visited one of the sites in just outside of Cape Town. So it was basically in the vicinity of the Berg River Dam, in the area of one of the famous wine producing areas known as Franschhoek in the Western Cape. So participants were guided through the respective site by the Natural Resource Management Project Managers. It's basically one of our units that's responsible for clearing alien invasives, making sure that we release more water back into our dams and river systems so that they benefit the downstream economies. And so both sites, as I said, are linked to the Berg River and its associated catchments, which is heavily infested with alien vegetation, thus causing huge water losses. So the project activities entails clearing of alien vegetation, which is high altitude in this case, specialized. So the site was chosen since it basically observes the EBA principles and ecosystem services and socio-economic aspects. And quickly, in summary, the overall messages that came out of the workshop: the realization that there is a need to capacitate the communities to sustain project funding and to shy away from EBA projects relying on grant funding, such that the projects become self-sustaining going forward. There is a need to include communities when assessing project funds and help them to develop bankable projects. Needs to be taken of where the EBA projects are achieving meaningful outcomes, ensure that key needs relate to EBA are addressed in a joint and coordinated manner. Also support the generation of required knowledge and facilitate the capturing and sharing of knowledge. In particular projects and programs through case studies, maps, guidelines, which we have done so far. And also the department, my department, and the South African National Biodiversity Institute would formulate task teams for each of these themes, which we have done so far, and to develop concrete actions and timelines. Progress or outcomes of all the task teams will be presented at the subsequent community of practice sessions, as I've mentioned. Unfortunately, we couldn't have the session this year. It will only be held early next year. And lastly, community of practice will meet on an annual basis, and that there will be regular communication of information and events relating to EBA. So as you can see, it's work in progress, and as I've mentioned, we had to postpone the second meeting, which would have begun now, to put the activities down against timelines, and also how and who do we work with towards facilitating the implementations thereof. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Barney. Yeah, it's very, very interesting to see where both communities are standing, what you've been doing and what you've achieved. So really thank you for sharing these insights. And I can already see that quite a few people are asking whether we will share the PowerPoint presentations. Yeah, we are happy to do that. There will be, as I mentioned in the beginning, a recording available of this webinar. And with that, I will also send out the presentations from today. Yes, I will try to make sure that everyone receives the information, but we will also forward it through our networks so that it gets to you. We are running a little bit behind schedule. I would, however, like to raise two questions that came up in the chat. If people feel okay with speaking up themselves, I would encourage you to do so, but I'm also happy to read out the questions. So I would like to start with Annadelle, who asked about the acceptance of government and private sector of the idea of a community of practice. Annadelle, do you want to pose your question directly?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Barney, was the idea on the tax incentives accepted by a wide range of people in the government as well as in the private sector? It's very interesting tool to promote EBA. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Can I go ahead and respond?
Yes, please go ahead. Sure.
So we have an current initiative which is looking at conservation areas specifically. So government has agreed towards that mechanism. So we are looking at how also that could benefit EBA, for instance. So it's still early days in terms of exploring how we can match, this so that it benefits. But as we know, conservation areas also present EBA benefits. So that's where we are currently. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Barney. And then I have a question for Albert from Michelle. Are you still there, and do you want to pose your question yourself? Otherwise, I'm going to read it out in a moment.
Thank you very much, Louise. I just wanted to know all the activities of the community of practices started in the Philippines, because the beginning is always very difficult, and I would like also to know what were or still are the difficulties that you are meeting. So thank you very much if you can help me on this.
Yes, thank you so much for that interesting question. It's always be a challenge for any organization, for any for any group in starting its its programs, its activities. It so happened that in the Philippines we were so fortunate because the project that we have with the GIZ has actually helped us in getting stakeholders to be engaged in EBA. It has something to do with having a very interesting kind of topic, like a new topic like EBA being communicated among various stakeholders. So having that kind of forum, or we also had EBA orientation, we were able to engage, to entice stakeholders in the discussion, in various narratives, in various discussion, workshops, orientation on EBA. So actually that has given us the opportunity to, I hate to call it recruit everybody to the community, but it has given them a sense of belongingness, having that kind of engagement in various workshops initiated by the project with the GIZ. So actually, yeah, it has also helped us in in communicating or disseminating the discussion on EBA, and we were able to integrate the EBA concepts into various into various development plans, and to from national to subnational to up to the communities. So we were successful in in getting stakeholders engaged in EBA because we had the knowledge. Well, we were provided with the knowledge. We were provided with the orientation on the concepts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albert. And one last question from Ntando to Albert also. Ntando, do you just want to unmute yourself?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the presenters for the very insightful presentations. Yes, Albert, very quickly, I just wanted to check. You talked about a social media webpage that you established. So is it managed by your department, and how do you manage the account? I mean, to just ensure that it's relevant content to EBA. And then lastly, you had also mentioned the that you did an EBA evaluation course. So what was the actual purpose, and is this a formal course? Thanks.
Maybe I can, I'm not sure, Albert, if the sound quality was good enough. I can repeat. And for the second
Yes,
part,
please.
yeah,
Yeah.
good. So the question was about the social media webpage, so your Facebook page. Is it managed by your department, and how do you manage the account and make sure that the posts really are related to EBA? And there was a second part of the question, which I can briefly answer. There's an EBA training course on EBA evaluation, which the global project has developed and implemented. So yes, it's a formal course by our project, and it's available. Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. So actually, the Facebook account that we have is it's not an official Facebook account, but it is being maintained by ourselves, by the staff of the climate change division staff. We are, we're just managing it as our personal account. It's not really being maintained or being maintained by the office. So it's a personal account, shared among the members. And yeah, I think that the comment is about valuation. We really have appreciated the training that we had on valuation, because now we have expanded the systems of interest, especially on looking at a particular component of an ecosystem, working on the chain, a value chain. So that has given us a wider kind of what you call this perspective, or the way we see the coverage of the of the EBA concept. Sorry. So it actually it was the decision by the community to have this evaluation training, because we were already having having instructions from our principals that we really have to work on specific needs-based kind of intervention at the community level. Thanks so much.
Very much. With this, to close this and thank everyone for joining. Thank very much. Give a big thanks to our presenters and speakers. Thank you very much for being here. As mentioned before, we will send around the recording very soon. And if you have any further questions, you can always reach out to me. I am posting my email address here in the chat. So anything related to our project, you can always get in touch with me. Yes, I would like to thank you one more time for being here, and we very much look forward to working with you and hope to see more communities of practice come up in the future. Thank you very much and have a good day and evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you. Bye.